Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
You know, often in science, new findings force us to re-examine earlier beliefs and assumptions. And a recent study of meerkats is having exactly this effect. The study examined the meerkat's behavior quite closely, much more closely than had ever been done before. And some interesting things were found, like about eating habits. It showed that typically meerkats eat before they stand guard. So the one standing guard had a full stomach. And the study also found that since the sentinel is the first to see a predator coming, it's the most likely to escape, because it often stands guard near a burrow, so it can run immediately into the burrow after giving the alarm. The other meerkats, the ones scattered about looking for food, are actually in greater danger. And in fact, other studies have suggested that when an animal creates an alarm, the alarm call might cause the other group members either to gather together or else to move about very quickly, behaviors that might actually draw the predator's attention away from the caller, increasing that animal's own chances of survival. And what about people? What about some human acts that might be considered altruistic? Let's take an extreme case. Suppose a person donates a kidney to a relative, or even to a complete stranger. A selfless act, right? But doesn't the donor receive appreciation and approval from the stranger and from society? Doesn't the donor gain an increased sense of self-worth? Couldn't such non-material rewards be considered very valuable to some people?
Summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they oppose specific points made in the reading passage. Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
Lately, we've been seeing some professors on television. Though it's sometimes claimed to be a good thing, we should question whether anybody really benefits from it. First of all, it's not good for the professors themselves, not from a professional standpoint. Rightly or wrongly, a professor who appears on TV tends to get the reputation among fellow professors of being someone who is not a serious scholar, someone who chooses to entertain rather than to educate. And for that reason, TV professors may not be invited to important conferences, important meetings to discuss their academic work. They may even have difficulty getting money to do research. So for professors, being a TV celebrity has important disadvantages. A second point is that being on TV can take a lot of a professor's time. Not just the time on TV, but also time figuring out what to present, and time spent rehearsing, travel time, even time getting made up to look good for the cameras. And all this time comes out of the time the professor can spend doing research, meeting with students, and attending to university business. So you can certainly see there are problems for the university and its students when professors are in the TV studio and not on campus. So, who does benefit? The public? That's not so clear either. Look, professors do have a lot of knowledge to offer, but TV networks don't want really serious, in-depth academic lectures for after-dinner viewing. What the networks want is the academic title, not the intellectual substance. The material that professors usually present on TV, such as background on current events or some brief historical introduction to a new movie version of a great literary work, This material is not much different from what viewers would get from a TV reporter who had done a little homework.
Summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they oppose specific points made in the reading passage. Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
Everything you just read about Portrait of an Elderly Woman in a White Bonnet is true, and yet, after a thorough re-examination of the painting, a panel of experts has recently concluded that it's indeed a work by Rembrandt. And here's why. First, the fur collar. X-rays and analysis of the pigments in the paint have shown that the fur collar wasn't part of the original painting. The fur collar was painted over the top of the original painting about 100 years after the painting was made. Why? Someone probably wanted to increase the value of the painting by making it look like a formal portrait of an aristocratic lady. Second, the supposed error with light and shadow. Once the paint of the added fur collar was removed, the original painting could be seen. In the original painting, the woman is wearing a simple collar of light-colored cloth. The light-colored cloth of this collar reflects light that illuminates part of the woman's face. That's why the face is not in partial shadow. So in the original painting, light and shadow are very realistic and just what we would expect from Rembrandt. Finally, the wood panel. It turns out that when the fur collar was added, the wood panel was also enlarged with extra wood pieces glued to the sides and the top to make the painting more grand and more valuable. So the original painting is actually painted on a single piece of wood, as would be expected from a Rembrandt painting. And in fact, researchers have found that the piece of wood in the original form of Portrait of an Elderly Woman in a White Bonnet is from the very same tree as the wood panel used for another painting by Rembrandt, his Self-Portrait with a Hat.
Summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they answer the specific problems presented in the reading passage. Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
You've just read about 3 ways to save Torreya taxifolia. Unfortunately, none of these three options provides a satisfactory solution. About the first solution, reestablishing Torreya in the same location, that's unlikely to be successful because of what's happening to the coolest, dampest areas within Torreya's microclimate. These areas are being strongly affected by changes in the climate of the larger region. This could be because global warming has contributed to an increase in overall temperatures in the region, or because wetlands throughout Florida have been drained. Either way, many areas across the region are becoming drier, so it's unlikely that Torreya would have the conditions it needs to survive anywhere within its original Florida microclimate. Now, about the second solution, relocating Torreya far from where it currently grows, well, let's look at what happened when humans helped another tree, the black locust tree, move north to a new environment. When they did this, the black locust tree spread so quickly that it killed off many plants and trees in the new environment, and some of these plants and trees were themselves already in danger of becoming extinct. So assisted migration can have unpredicted outcomes for the new environment. Third, research centers are probably not a solution either. That's because the population of Torreya trees that can be kept in the centers will probably not be able to resist diseases. For a population of trees to survive a disease, it needs to be relatively large and it needs to be genetically diverse. Tree populations in the wild usually satisfy those criteria, but research centers would simply not have enough capacity to keep a large and diverse population of Torreya trees, so trees in such centers will not be capable of surviving diseases in the long term.
Summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they cast doubt on the specific solutions presented in the reading passage.